This video is sponsored by Squarespace.
Hello Internet, Taliesin here, and today we are talking melee DPS because it's that time again when a new expansion is about to pop and you, the player, asks that eternal question. Seriously, what is going on with my spec though? So whether you want to know what the War Within has in store for your warband fam, whether you're a raid leader who wants to get familiar with the new strengths and weaknesses of your team, what's going on with the hero talents, or whether you need to find out which class you should re-roll so that you can take your rightful place at the very top of the War Within damage meters, where you belong. Where you've always belonged, then this is the video for you as we rate every single melee spec in the game, how they feel, what they can do, what they can't do, and more. So join us. Oh, I missed this. For the War Within melee ranked. Okay, go, 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 go. I've got a confession to make when it comes to Windwalker. Every expansion, when I do these guides, I'm like, yeah, Windwalker is awesome. It's got amazing, unique class design thanks to its combo strikes mastery that rewards you for using different abilities after each other, creating a great sense of fluid, flowing martial arts combat. It's got unsurpassed mobility, does fantastic AOE with basically no loss of damage when switching targets, so it's an absolute boss in Mythic Plus, and Ring of Peace is one of the best utilities in the game. 10 out of 10, no notes. But my dirty secret is that when it comes to the expansion itself, I find myself not playing the class anywhere near as much as I thought. Well, in the War Within, that could be about to change, because Windwalker has seen a fantastic rework that makes it one of the most fun and satisfying melee in town. Another confession, Whirling Dragon Punch has always been a favorite of mine, basically just because it looks so cool, and I've always just wished it was better, you know? And in War Within, it is! Finally becoming the Street Fighter 2 uppercut of awesomeness I needed. Revolving Dragon Whirl makes it proc an instant dance of Chi-G, eliminating the RNG on one of your most important AOE abilities. Alternatively, Knowledge of the Broken Temple makes it significantly buff your Teachings of the Monastery, which if combined with shadowboxing threads, can give you up to 24 simultaneous blackout kicks with one button press. Or, you know, maybe you don't like Dragon Punch as much as me, you freak, and always wished Crackling Jade Lightning was a viable part of your rotation. Well, good news! Last Emperor's Capacitator makes it a regular and very satisfying button press, and Power of the Thunder King chains it to 4 extra targets, reduces its channel time by 50%, and raises a fleet of 1,000 Star Destroyers out of absolutely nowhere, making it a true force to be reckoned with. Or, you know, maybe you really want to buff your Tiger and give it a proc chance from Fists of Fury to get the most out of the Celestial interplay in your Conduit of the Celestials hero talent tree. Or maybe put all your points into Strike of the Windlord. You can, because in War Within, Windwalker has a genuine case to be called the Capstone Master, with so many options and legitimate build diversity in the tree that you may never take Jadefire Stomp ever again, and wouldn't that be nice? Conduit of the Celestials is by far the most active of the hero talent choices with that celestial interplay, while Shadowpan is the entirely passive choice, but still one of those ones that gives you a sense of building to something, and I have to say, I enjoy them both. Playing the class in this testing period, I just feel like I have a lot more available abilities to press at any one time than I'm used to with Windwalker, and it feels even more fluid and ninja-like than ever as a result. It has a genuine shout for being the most fun melee spec in War Within, and I know I always say this, but one that I can see myself playing the shit out of. I always think of Retribution Paladin as the old reliable, a steady, predictable builder-spender rotation that is solid in any scenario, capable of legit burst windows, and the kind of group utility that can keep your tank and healer up at those vital moments when the going gets tough. And in War Within, the Ret Relier meter has been cranked up to 11, making it probably the safest melee spec to choose if you want to have fun, do numbers, and be valued by your team. Ret has seen some really good streamlining of abilities this time round, making their simple rotation even more efficient with some sensible pairing up of abilities. Crusader becoming your auto attack, Blade of Justice casting Consecration, Radiant Glory makes Wake of Ashes pop wings for a bit. Retribution has also hit the jackpot in the hero talent lottery with 2 completely different playstyles on offer. Templar is the more straightforward choice that gives you the extra Hammer of Light button press from using Wake of Ashes, and like, yeah, a sword to a hammer, instant upgrade, I think we'll all agree. And an occasional free Hammer of Light building up during combat. This is probably more of the single target choice, and I like this tree because I like Radiant Glory, and knowing that my wings are always guaranteed to be out and flapping when I use Hammer of Light is just, I mean, it's ret all over really, isn't it? Lining up your cooldown for you so you can just keep doing your thing. Herald of the Sun is the more involved choice, and also working off of Wake of Ashes, putting damage and healing dots out on use, and cool looking beams that heal or damage everything in them. There's obviously some good high-level play potential in there, which you have the mental space to think about because the rest of the spec is so smooth and intuitive. I really like Ret. It's had intelligent improvements, it appears to be tuned very competitively at the moment too, and it is looking to be one of the big boys of War Within melee DPS. Welcome to the War Within Feral Druid. Like the Feral Druid, but slower. Or at least that was the stated aim from Blizzard in testing, conjuring images of a glorious return to bleeds over bites. Making the most of Cat's #1 unique selling point, in my opinion, the fact that it is really the only class in the game now where snapshotting is still a thing. I know lots of you know what snapshotting is, but I know lots of you don't. So, in WoW, if you have a damage over time effect active and you hit a cooldown that increases your damage, then the damage of your existing dots will be raised accordingly for the duration of the cooldown and then return to normal when it ends. Snapshotting, though, means that the multiple damage over time effects that Feral is built on will do damage for their entire duration depending on what buffs were active when they were cast. So you get a rip in with 1 second left of your Tiger's Fury and Berserk, then the extra damage from those two buffs is applied to the whole length of the dot rather than dropping off when the buff ends. Likewise, though, those cooldowns won't increase the damage of dots that were cast outside of those buffs. It's an old school style that is obviously about maximizing windows. It takes thought and patience, can be very rewarding, and often feels like it absolutely hates you, which I've always thought is very fitting for a cat. Feral still has very good sustain AOE, although you'll find the rotation in this scenario is based on Apex Predator procs from your Primal Wrath bleeds, so basically biting. Lots of biting again. The hero talents are fine. Druid of the Claw is a not frequent enough proc that improves your ferocious bites, but which is otherwise pretty boring apart from how it makes your Berserk window, well, a very awesome, dangerous window. Like, it's got a lot of jagged broken glass in it now, that window. Wildstalker is all about vines and explosions and loads of other fun stuff that happens entirely passively in the background. And of course, you're a druid, so you've got utility up the wazoo, and you are extremely useful to have around. Not very fitting for a cat. Two problems as I see it. Tiger's Fury currently does not reset after killing an enemy, which means the spec feels much less fluid in dungeons and open world content, and the loss of extra range effects for melee in general in the War Within has hit cats especially hard, I think. Well, they took a while, but when they came, oh boy, were these Enhancement Shaman changes worth the wait. I said all the way through Dragonflight that just from a gameplay point of view, I thought Enhancement was the best designed rotation in the game. It had multiple viable talent loadouts, it looked awesome, it was just a great spec, which means that going into War Within, the #1 wishlist item was very modest really, just to streamline some of those annoying 2-point talent tree nodes into a more efficient bundle. And I am happy to report that Enhancement got that and much, much more. Molten Assault, Improved Maelstrom Weapon, and Witch Doctor's Ancestry are all now 1-point talents. Feral Lunge is baseline. Doom Winds is on a 1-minute cooldown. Sky Fury is a new hour-long raid buff version of Wind Fury. And on top of that, in Stormbringer, I think Enhancement has one of the best hero talent trees in the game, both in terms of use and class fantasy. Spending 40 Maelstrom weapon stacks turns Lightning Bolt into Tempest, which gives you uncapped AOE damage and is just a lightning fast, procky crackly thrill ride with either a Storm or Elementalist build. Totemic is potentially very powerful, dropping a totem that damages enemies. For me, it just affects so many spells that it's actually an effort to take everything that you need on the spec tree. That totem does look banging though, fair play. Overall, Enhancement Shaman in War Within is a big improvement on an already great spec and feels more Enhancement Shaman than at any time during modern WoW. I've come back to it again and again in testing. Tell your friends, the Battle Mage truly is back. Havoc remains the simple, whizzy, modern-feeling MMO spec that it always has been. At its best, inertia utilizing movement abilities by making Fell Rush activate a huge and very short damage buff for explosive windows, which I personally love because it really hammers home the edgelord 90s superhero class fantasy, and also because it means every now and then, in tight spaces, your Havoc teammate might just disappear off a ledge to their death, which I've always found incredibly funny. And that is all present and correct in War Within, and is mostly unchanged at a core level from its big 10.2 rework. Good stuff. So why are so many Havoc players currently so down on the spec going into War Within? Well, they have a hero talent worst case scenario. Aldraki Reaver is insanely powerful. A buffed up glaive throw that empowers your next Chaos Strike and Blade Dance, and gives you a 20% damage buff for 10 seconds and 15% attack speed buff for 20 seconds. I also really like how on the tree you can get Vengeful Retreat to reset the cooldown on Fellblade. I love all that swoopy shit. This hero talent is an absolute beast. There's only one problem. It takes 6 soul fragments to make it happen, so you have to make sure you are moving about collecting your soul fragments, and like... It's one of those things which is obviously a bit annoying the first time you do it, and insidiously annoying after a few hours play. Fellscarred empowers your metamorphosis and feels very badass once every 2 minutes. The problem is, it doesn't come anywhere near Reaver in terms of numbers. You're going to do literally 30% odd less damage in all scenarios by going with Fellscarred, and without going into too much detail, it's honestly hard to see how that could be solved with mere tuning. It would probably take a fundamental redesign on one of these trees to bring them into line. And yeah, that sucks. It's why Havoc pros are annoyed, but this spec is still Havoc at the end of the day. It's still one of the fastest, most straightforward and fresh-feeling melee specs out there. Outrageous mobility, raid buffs that every group will need. Let's be honest, it's going to do great damage everywhere you go, so it's a great choice for zoomy zoomer fun. And hey, maybe you like going around picking up soul fragments. I'm happy for you, that's cool. I have a love-hate relationship with Outlaw. I love how recklessly fast-paced it is. If you like to press more buttons than a Pearly King jacket factory, then Outlaw is the spec for you. I hate the animation for Killing Spree. I mean, I'm sorry, no single button press should change your camera position multiple times, especially in melee. Like, seriously, what the fuck is this? Killing Spree. I love that it has possibly the best sustained AOE in the game, and definitely the easiest. You just remember to press Blade Flurry and then carry on doing what you'd have been doing anyway. But you do have to remember to press Blade Flurry though. I love that Adrenaline Rush now works off of haste, making haste a good stat for Outlaw, because I love haste specs. I hate how rogues have probably the poopiest set of hero talents out of all the melee classes. Although actually, Outlaw gets off pretty lightly compared to the other two. Trickster and Fatebound are both passive choices that tick away in the background, but at least they are currently pretty much indistinguishable in terms of numbers, so you get complete freedom in which passive talents that won't affect your gameplay you want to go with. Except bear in mind that if you choose Trickster, then currently it is recommended that you don't select the Capstone coup de grace, because the overly long animation on the ability gets in the way of your between the eyes window. I mean, come on, dudes. Whatever, Outlaw is still outrageous fun. It still does too much damage in its between the eyes stealth windows. You still get to be a pirate, and are Mythic Pugs gonna take you along? Yes, they are. You know what? There's some really good changes to Ass Rogue in War Within that I really like. I like that it's back to being a more level, sustained damage profile after leaning into more bursty territory in recent times. That just seems more ass to me. That said though, there is still some good burst on offer, as well as powerful and effortless execute damage with Zoldike Recipe. I like that Kingsbane now only takes 50 stacks to reach max power instead of 99, so you can spend less time begging for power infusion on your ass and get on with playing the game. I like how in Deathstalker you've got probably the best rogue spec hero talent tree combination, which really makes it feel like your ass is unloading on your target when it all gets going. And I like the seriously splooshy stabby blood noises it makes too. What I'm saying is, I appreciate ass. I'm a fan of ass, but for me, it's still a bit albeit too much effort for not enough gain. I'm not saying it's too complicated, okay? So, for example, Feral or Subtlety are examples of specs which are complicated, but with a high level of satisfaction when you get them right. Assassination is actually pretty simple, it's just there feels like way too many steps to get normal amounts of play out of it. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. And take that with a pinch of salt, because it is very subjective, okay? It's still got incredible CC utility and survivability, and it is undoubtedly the classic rogue spec. Like, this is what you expect a rogue to be, and that counts for a lot, honestly. Sub is now, at long last, indisputably the Shadowdancer rogue, since it is now the only rogue that has access to Shadow Dance. So it is literally the Shadowdancer rogue, I wasn't being poetic. Weaving in and out of stealth is such a great class fantasy, and is the most satisfyingly complex rogue rotation, in my opinion. Although, if the promised Shadow Dust nerfs go through, that should go a fair way to making it a lot more user-friendly too. That class fantasy is only heightened by the War Within Season 1 tier set, and yeah, I know I don't talk about tier sets anywhere else in this video, but you need to understand that the Sub 4 set makes Secret Technique mandatory, and like, yay, Secret Technique, yay to the stabby mirror image. We like that. I think Sub is the most elegant of the rogue classes, and I like that more of that shadow dancing toolkit is unique to them in the War Within. But at the time of writing, there is a sense going into next expansion that rogues in general are a little bit neglected. Their hero talents have been almost impossible to test because they arrived late and were incredibly buggy. They're not all that inspiring anyway, and of every class on this list, you have to say that rogues are probably the most likely to be getting further alterations of some sort before launch. If not, and this is it, Sub and Outlaw and Ass are still all solid rogue specs. There's just a feeling that they haven't really been invited to the shiny new hype party yet. They're kind of skulking around outside, which is actually quite fitting.
Hi everyone, it's me yet again. I do want to say thank you guys for watching, and thank you to Squarespace for continuing to sponsor these silly little videos. While I would never describe myself as a girl boss, I've been in a bit of a business mood today, and it got me thinking about what I would do differently if I, really wanted to boss it. And thankfully, Squarespace has everything built in to optimize and streamline the biz side of things. Check out this handy content and memberships tab. I do love a bit of content. What's cool is that if we really wanted to, we could move off of every other platform out there and work straight off of Squarespace. We could build a members only site, or individual page, sell courses, or monetize a blog. Blogs are back again, right? Yeah. But the coolest of all these features for me is video on demand, VODs. How cool is this? If we really wanted to, we could move our entire library of existing content off of the rest of the internet, plonk it right here, directly into a lovely pre-made template, gotta love those templates, and go from there. And I love how it creates this dedicated video page already in our existing style and template that I just have to populate with content. Instead of this super hip placeholder yoga lady, just imagine me doing your 30-minute bedtime unwind, because I know what your 30-minute bedtime unwind really is. It's video games. Me too. And should we ever want to properly monetize that, Squarespace gives you the option of paywalling the whole thing and even setting up payment plans. Paywalls are cool now, right? Yeah. Get to making that bread and head to squarespace.com/Taliesin Evitel for 10% off your first purchase of a Squarespace website or domain, or just use code Taliesin Evitel instead. That's squarespace.com/Taliesin Evitel.
Evie, I can't access our website.
The paywall is working.
Survival has had a nice big makeover for War Within, which I'm going to call the Bomb Weaver, with a shifted focus onto making things that go boom. Wildfire Infusion is gone because Wildfire bomb stacks now overlap, and new talents Grenade Juggler, Sulfur-Lined Pockets, and Bombardier all mean loads of bombs, loads of explosions, and loads of explosive shots from those bombs. The biggest change to your rotation, though, is that Tip of the Spear is no longer a random proc, but something activated by kill command, up to 3 stacks, buffing the damage of your next non-kill command ability by 20%. And this changes the whole rotation and feel of the spec, because now it becomes about weaving your most hard-hitting explosive shots and wildfire bombs and kill shots into those tip-of-the-spear buffs. Suddenly, Survival Hunter is kind of like a pyromaniac Windwalker now. It's a good concept, which maybe doesn't feel as smooth as it should. There's a lot of focus capping in my experience, and it feels like when the big procs come, they all come at once and create a massive backlog, but which I think is generally an improvement over Dragonflight Survival in a lot of important ways. Mongoose Bite is the elephant in the room with all this, though, since its building stacks and tight damage windows are just not a very intuitive fit with this new weaving style, and no longer really a central part of the rotation. Although if we're being fair, you could probably already say that in Dragonflight. This just makes it way more obvious. What I'm saying is, if you love Mongoose Bite, like Mongoose Bite is your thing, everyone always gets you Mongoose Bite for Christmas or whatever, this might be an issue. Survival's hero talents are both pretty passive affairs, with Pack Leader leaning more towards single target and Sentinel the AOE pick, and neither really changing up your gameplay. But I like this rework. I've got a soft spot for Survival. I like how it has a lot of AOE effectiveness when you're in a single target build, and lots of single target power when you're in an AOE build. I like how you can talent basically all of your cooldowns to be up every minute, and I just like blowing shit up. I'm a simple man. I love how old school ARMS still feels. A true proper maintenance spec, managing your resources and your bleeds and your cooldowns for your Colossus windows, and also spinning, like loads. And ARMS has got a toolkit larger than Bob the f***ing Builder, with seemingly a loadout for every occasion, from single target to cleave, and ARMS is probably the best melee cleaver going, to be honest, to full-on AoE and the eternal favourite, execute damage. It's not a complicated rotation, but it can be a fairly unforgiving one if you mess up that rage flow, with any accidental downtime having a big impact on your overall damage. So it's good news for everyone that efforts have been made in War Within to smooth the rage economy. So rage regeneration itself is noticeably slower, but rage spending abilities cost significantly less, and the result is, it's a bit smoother, yeah. I really like how the Colossus hero talent tree works with ARMS. It feels beefy to press and has an amazing synergy with sweeping strikes and mortal strikes, all the ways you can proc mortal strikes and reset the cooldown. It just seems tailor-made for ARMS, and all comes totally naturally. Slayer boils down to more sudden death procs and little mini blade storms happening every now and then, so executing and spinning, we are on familiar ground here, boys. A little quirk of both these trees is that Demolish and Blade Storm both lock you into a fairly long animation and essentially pause the flow of your button pressing, something which I'd usually say is a criticism, but which I actually kind of like on ARMS, to be honest. I think the feeling of planting your feet and smashing something fits the fantasy well. It is, though, a little less fitting for Fury Warrior, because Fury is the fast-paced warrior, where instead of managing a limited resource, you are using multiple builders in quick succession to maintain your enraged damage buff. It's a brilliant example of a simple, modern, twitchy MMO class rotation, which demands more constant engagement than Cody Brown, and is traditionally my main ult in most expansions, because I love that shit. That's my bias right there. I love that shit. That slower rage regeneration means that Bloodthirst is now the button that you will always press before Raging Blow, which I like. Blade Storm is back for Fury. Thanks, ARMS. With new Capstone, Unhinged. Thanks, ARMS. Which makes it throw out Bloodthirsts as you go. Very nice if you've got a few stacks of Meat Cleaver up. And Odin's Fury has seen a significant damage upgrade, which means it hits like a truck now. So yeah, more spinning, more winning. Fury's best damage has basically zero ramp up. You charge, you avatar, you blade storm, you stop the count. Fury is the best DPS, no need to carry on the fight. To the extent that there are genuine potential threat issues with this spec, and I've always found it hilarious how relatively squishy the plate armored, occasionally stone-skinned beefcake warrior can actually be. The Slayer hero talent tree slots in with all of this spinning effortlessly. Mountain Thane is based around Thunderclap and doesn't turn your warrior into an enhancement shaman, but it doesn't not turn them into an enhancement shaman, you know? Lots of nature damage, lots of brilliant lightning effects, lots of stamping. It's one of the more thematically strong hero talents in the game, and will basically see Thunderclap taking the place of Whirlwind in your rotation, especially because Meat Cleaver procs from both of those abilities now. Fury is fast and furious, you can't take your eyes off it, it's full of big juicy burst AOE cooldowns just itching to be unleashed over a whole bunch of mobs, as long as the pack is 5 mobs or less. And you might be thinking, wow, Tally, Fury sounds like an absolute blast in AOE. What about the single target? Which is a great question, and the answer is shh. Frosty K always had a tough job on its hands in War Within because both Blood and Unholy are absolute bangers that are going to get a lot of play. But you know what? This Lich Kingy bad boy is in a pretty good spot too. The only melee class in the game that can choose whether to equip a two-handed weapon or dual wield, it follows that Frost has genuine choice and variety in its gameplay styles too. Good old Breath of Sindragosa, where you jam in as much damage into an extendable window as possible, or the much more sustained Obliterate builds. I always think, you know, if Obliterate is good, then that's a pretty solid sign that Frost DK is good. And internet, Obliterate is good. With the cleave effects of Death and Decay now lingering for 4 seconds after you leave the area of effect, really improving the Pillar of Frost windows that are the core of the Obliterate build, and Frost size changed to a hard-hitting cooldown that always critically strikes, doing 4 times damage. Having its cooldown reduced by using Killing Machine, Frost's moment-to-moment AOE gameplay is suddenly really smooth and very interesting. Hero talents-wise, Deathbringer is just about the most pure damage tree in the game, I think, with an extra button to press very regularly to apply the effect, whereas Rider of the Apocalypse manages the impressive feat of being incredibly passive for the most part, but also the tree that fundamentally changes a single class the most at a core level. Because you're mobile now. You are a bony cold paladin now. This is obviously wonderful for open world play, but also a complete game changer for Frost and Unholy in instances too, and is also the choice that syncs better with a Breath of Sindragosa style, since Frostswyrm's Fury will always summon all 4 of your buddies just when you need them most. I am very pleasantly surprised by Frost this time out. It's fast, procky, fluid, and resource richer than a Saudi oil field. Unholy is usually the connoisseur choice to Frost's more populist style, being more complex and harder to play, but with greater rewards and satisfaction. And this War Within iteration is definitely high on rewards, definitely big on satisfaction, but I think it has a legitimate case for now being the easier to play of the pair too. And honestly, Unholy seems to be everyone's favourite spec so far this expansion, with a freshened up talent tree giving more variety in build options, and hero talents that just feel great. The class fantasy of applying swords to your main target and then squelchly bursting them is present and correct, and Epidemic is still the most incredible melee AoE ability any Skelly could ever wish for. Wonderfully, Army of the Dead now has a functioning in normal society 3-minute cooldown, and you can replace it with Abomination on a 90-second cooldown for some sick AoE fun. And either way, suddenly Unholy has a ton of cooldowns that all line up every 1.5 minutes. And since Army of the Dead and Abomination will both summon all 4 of your horsemen in the Rider of the Apocalypse talent tree, giving you a literal Army of the Dead, well, okay, an even bigger Army of the Dead, I think Unholy truly achieves that necromancer fantasy with this talent tree. A necromancer on a horse, the best kind. San Lane works extra well with a Death Coil build, and it's more about giving you extra haste, which is always lovely, and survival, so you can be immortal and stay on your feet basically forever trying to work out how to spend all the runes it gives you that you're never going to get a chance to use. Also, and this is very important, the Vampiric Strike ability it gives you has a grade A squelchy noise, taking Unholy's squelchy noise count up to like 4 squelchy noises, which is frankly an embarrassment of riches. Honestly, right now, I think Unholy is probably the most fun that you can have in dungeons with a melee rotation, and if the tuning holds out, you're going to see an epidemic of them in War Within. And there you have it, our verdict on the melee DPS specs in War Within. But what do you think? How is your main faring? What are you thinking of re-rolling? And how did Blizzard dick it all up and break the game this time? Let us know in the comments below. And thanks for joining us today. If you like this video, don't thank us. Thank our patrons who give their actual real-life money to make all of our work happen. And seriously, patrons, thank you, because without you, there would be a whole lot less Taliesin and Evitel. If you didn't like it, downvote the shit out of it. And remember, my name is Signs of Kalani. No, my name is Taliesin from me and Evitel 2. Until next time, cheerio.